Diopo, Chaku Kilio Kishina. Maognao Hippie Hetcha.
Hey everybody, it's Charlie. This is going to be my Westworld episode 8 video. Obviously, spoiler warning if you haven't seen it yet, but is probably my favorite episode of the season so far. Like this great story about the Ghost Nation person that we've been seeing all the way since those flashbacks to 30 plus years ago. We got a little more context for how Maeve's abilities work in a teaser for like the very gruesome future healing the man in black that his daughter has planned for him. Like, oh, my way is going to be so much worse for him. So we got a whole bunch of stuff to look forward to. But if you're finding me for the first time, be sure to subscribe to get all the episodes. We still have a couple left to go, but top 10 WTF and Easter eggs. Starting with number 10, the man in black crawls his way to the river and comes upon the ghost, or the ghost finds him. Because he's awake, there's this implication that he's been watching all this happen, so he's probably been keeping tabs on a lot of different people, because they imply that the group of people that he's been traveling with has been growing and growing as more and more hosts start to become awake. So it's almost like he controls the entire Ghost Nation, and they're all trying to help people, and through that, he probably knows exactly what's going on with Dolores and all the Delos people. They go into this grand flashback as he starts telling his backstory to Maeve's daughter, and you get that first teaser for what he was doing before the first big narrative change. So they don't give a real clear explainer about when this is happening, when he goes from being just like this normal, happy-go-lucky, peaceful Ghost Nation soldier to like the really hardcore killer that they turned him into. Later in the episode, when he first gets himself killed so that he can infiltrate the Mesa, they say it's been about 10 years. So I think we can assume he's been like this for a little over 10 years. But it is funny to see his slow descent as he starts to carve the maze and everything, and all the other Ghost Nation people think that he's completely lost his mind. Number 9, that first uprising that he witnessed, he calls it the Deathbringer, killing the creator. I love the way that they refer to Dolores as the Deathbringer. If you ever wondered if she was a villain this season, if it wasn't clear before, it's definitely clear now. We need to find the door before the Deathbringer ends us all, as if Dolores is probably going to wind up killing most of the other hosts. It makes you think about all those host bodies in the lake that we saw at the end of episode 1, which I'll refer to later in the video, because that's also very relevant when he says that he can't find the door out anymore, even though he goes back to the location where he saw it before. Looks very similar to the artificial lake that we saw at the beginning of the season, so just remember that. Number 8, he finds Logan post-naked ride, like he rode for so long that the horse died from exhaustion, and he looks like he's had heat stroke, maybe it's dehydration, but he's almost speaking in tongues, and it sounds a little bit like prophecy to the ghost, whose real name is actually Akecha. Like he says, this is the wrong world, there's gotta be a door out of here, and that gives him the idea to, number 7, find the valley beyond, which is the first time that he sees it. There's a giant hole. You see a ring, you see all these containers that look like they're storing things like potential bodies for people that they're trying to duplicate. There's still a lot of big questions about the grand Delos plan, like are they doing straight up future world plot where they're trying to replace world leaders and take over the world that way? Is it this really evil plan? Or are they simply just trying to profit by selling a form of immortality to these really rich guests? Whatever that is, this is the location. They call it the Valley Beyond that we've been referring to all season long. But then number 6, once he learns what's going on, he goes back and wakes his wife up. It's this beautiful reunion. I loved all their scenes together. The actress that played his wife was great. Obviously, the actor that was playing the ghost was amazing. You may actually remember him from a couple of other notable series. I believe he was the sheriff on the reservation during Longmire. That was the most recent thing that I've seen him in, but he's great in all the stuff that he does. But the whole thing is that after they have that reunion and she remembers him, when they go back to the Valley Beyond, you can still see the construction site, but it looks like they just covered it up. So you have to imagine that there's this great underground facility that's storing all this stuff. But if you look at the rock formations, it looks similar to what we saw when Bernard was looking at this artificial lake. But that makes you wonder about all these dead hosts that are floating in the lake. If they're actually dead, like when Bernard says, I killed them at the end of the season, if maybe somehow they found a way to enter the door, or maybe they died trying to enter the door and only a couple of them made it through. But we don't know that this moment right here where he's staring at all of them is the actual end of the season. It's probably right before the end of the season. There's probably like a lot of narrative that happens after this moment. But number 5, he figures out that he needs to do the same thing that Maeve did during season 1, get himself killed so that he can infiltrate the Mesa and get more answers. They pull him in, we get this really convenient date. It's been 10 years since we've updated him. 10 years since he became the killer-looking version of the Ghost Nation warrior. The scene where he finds his wife by traveling down into the bowels where they store all the bodies that they've fridged, it was totally beautiful, and it's this great awakening that he has. So if it wasn't clear, when he says that he was fully awakened to what his true purpose needed to be, when he says he looked beyond himself, it was him just realizing that all the other hosts, or most of the other hosts, were going through a version of what he was going through. So he sort of became this Moses character that wanted to lead his people out of Egypt, so to speak. That's probably a good metaphor. Let my people go. He wants to lead them through the door purely out of benevolence. So it becomes sort of like a really good version of what Dolores is trying to do. Dolores wants to get out of the park too, but now she's quote unquote the death bringer. So it's sort of two sides of the same coin, light and dark. Everybody wants out of the park. Some people want to do it for selfless reasons. Some people want to do it for selfish reasons. And remember, the door that we keep referring to has two sides to it. So you travel out of the park through the door, but I also think it's a bit of a metaphor for where the man in black is headed, where his arc is going to end. We'll talk about that again in a second, but all this idea of being selfless brings us back to Sizemore's storyline, number 4, crying over Maeve's body. So it's a little bit funny to see him like this, but it's also really touching because it's sort of him coming full circle. You deserve all the things that you want. You deserve your daughter. You deserve to be happy. And he sort of goes on his way. I kind of thought that he was going to try and rescue Maeve. But then we got an explainer at the end of the episode for why she's still sitting on that table, because we need to learn that she could communicate through her daughter and other hosts. So there's a little bit of exposition that was required before, I think, an inevitable Sizemore rescue scene. So she's all splayed open on the table there. She could probably save herself. But I think that what they're implying here is that Sizemore is eventually going to realize that they're just going to hack her to pieces and use her for their own purposes. So he needs to protect her and help her escape. So maybe Sizemore winds up killing some of the guards to protect Maeve. But number 3, the ghost meeting Ford. This is such a great scene too, and I love the way that he just rolled up on what looked like this elaborate diorama. It could have been Ford just tinkering with some sort of attack setup. He wanted to create this new narrative, so that's why he's doing this. But you never really know with Ford. He could have just been doing this as an elaborate invitation to come talk to him. Here I am, come ask me all the questions that you want to ask me. He explains everything to him and lets him know what the timeline is. So this is all happening right before the end of season 1. You will know when the Deathbringer comes for me again to lead your people to the door. But again, just reminding you that Dolores is the Deathbringer. She's going to end us all. I love the way he talks to Maeve's daughter. Yeah, I'm going to protect you. I couldn't protect you that one time. They keep referring to the man in black, who's still sort of bleeding out over by the tree this whole time. But number 2, when William's daughter comes for him, this actually gives you a bit of an idea because they keep talking about the door, the way out. And then when the ghost is talking to the man in black earlier in the episode, he also said that death is the way out and you don't deserve the way out yet. So when William's daughter says that he's a burden that only I can bear, and they both want to heal him so that he can suffer, live with the knowledge of what he's done, she says that the way that she's going to do that is going to be much, much worse. She's trying to appeal to the Ghost Nation warrior, no, I'll make him suffer even more. Would it not be crazy if she did the same thing to him that William did to James Delos, trapping a version of his consciousness in this lost bunker situation? That would be like a living hell for the man in black. He'd be aware of what he'd done. He'd sort of gain the sense of morality. But because it'd be a digital space, he would live forever effectively. And this whole thing has been about the guests trying to turn themselves into versions of the host. Dolores said that in last week's episode. You're trying to become us. So what if they're all going for the door in the valley beyond? The host tried to escape, but big twist for William when, the little Ford host told him at the beginning, this new game is for you. The game that William has been playing has been the road to what Ford has been doing this whole season, existing as a digital consciousness. So there are obviously a lot of big questions about where they would take that because they blew the backups up. They can't store information like that anymore. But it just depends on what the mechanics of the Valley Beyond are, which they haven't fully explained yet. Number 1, of course, was that last big explainer for how Maeve is connected deeply to her daughter and to other hosts in the park. Mostly her daughter, though. They want to turn the metaphor into a literal thing. Take my heart with you. She has a deep permalink to her daughter, but it's not just a metaphorical, emotional connection that like real humans, have deep connections to their offspring. Maeve has a physical connection to her daughter, so she can actually see through her eyes, which they kind of did with that last scene, where you're looking at the ghost's eyes and he says, "We'll protect your daughter. If you survive, come find us. If not, have a good death." Like I said, I think, part of the Sizemore redemption arc is helping to save her, so I don't think that this is the end of Maeve's story by a long shot. But I should also say, one of my number one, sort of tied for number one, was their use of Nirvana heart-shaped box, that cover. We found out they put it in the trailer way at the beginning of the season, but now it makes a lot more sense because of the saying that the ghost would say to his wife, "Take my heart with you." So I just love the way they weave that into the actual way they wrote the episode. What I'm expecting is that because there's only 2 episodes left, next week will be sort of an explainer for what's going on with the Valley Beyond and how it works, and then the finale will leave us with a really big cliffhanger pushing us into season 3. So E3 is happening right now. There'll be a couple things that I'll probably do for that in the next day or two, so just look out for that. And then just leave all your questions and video requests in the comments below. But click here for all my other Westworld videos, and click here for brand new Avengers. Thank you so much for watching. Everybody stay awesome. I'll see you guys tonight.